So Destiny recently has undergone a number of different changes that have really transitioned the game more into a state where the casual gamer can just jump in and get the stuff done and engage with Destiny content on like all different levels of the difficulty spectrum, whether it's entry-level content or endgame content. There's a lot of changes that have happened to make it more approachable. Okay, we've had things like skill-based matchmaking saying the casual player needs to be able to have a more casual experience in PvP. I'm not making a stance on that, I'm just making an observation. They've had the flawless pool come into the Trials of Osiris so that the casual gamer can come in later in the weekend when Trials is active and have an easier time playing endgame PvP activities. They've brought raids back from Destiny 1 that were designed around Destiny 1. These are endgame raid PvE activities, but they're extremely easy. Vault of Glass and King's Fall are arguably the easiest endgame PvE content in the game now. Even recent like seasonal story content like quest steps have been just completely removed, where Bungie's like, hey, we had a quest step in here to defeat 50 champions, but we just auto-completed that for you, right? Iron Banner dropped the whole light level advantages enabled part of it. That's now stripped from Iron Banner. You can go in there as a new light player with very low light and still play and get endgame PvP Iron Banner rewards. There were a number of sandbox changes that said, hey, the skill gap is too wide, really good players are too good at our game, and it's making it more difficult for casual players to play against them. So let's nerf in-air accuracy, let's nerf slides. Really talented players are sliding around the map into lanes to avoid getting headshot, but they have perfect accuracy, you know, while they're grounded, so they can slide and land shots accurately. Let's take that away. Let's give them more flinch. Let's give them less stability on their weapons while they're doing that. So things like that, they're saying people who are good at our game are too good at the game, and people who are casual at our game are having a hard time keeping up. Pinnacle weapons like Not Forgotten, Redrix's Claymore, the Recluse, gone from the game. We have now ritual weapons, which are significantly there's not name one ritual weapon recently that has had any kind of traction close to Not Forgotten, Redrix's Claymore, and the Recluse. You probably can't do it. So all of these things, this is just a big list. This is just an example of how in recent years Bungie has been making changes to the game, actively making changes to the game to make it more approachable for the casual audience. And what we're going to talk about in this video is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are they overcorrecting here? Are they watering down Destiny too much? Let's talk about that a little bit. We'll hit some of these items that I just listed and see how we feel about them. But first, let me take just 60 seconds to thank the sponsor of today's video, Outplayed. PC gamers, I've got good news for you. There's now a completely free way to record, capture, edit, and share all your greatest gaming moments quickly and easily, and it's with today's sponsor, Outplayed. This program actively supports over 300 games right now, and the best part about it is that you can customize what you want Outplayed to record for you. Things like kills, headshots, wins, even your own deaths, you know, just in case you die in some hilarious way and you want to share it with the world or your friends. You can save any moment with the touch of a hotkey, and whenever you're ready, you can trim, edit, and share these moments to Twitter, YouTube, Discord, Reddit, and more, like wherever your audience and friends may be. Outplayed will save you precious time so that you don't have to go sifting through hours of gameplay to find that one cool thing that happened. So let Outplayed focus on doing all the tedious work for you while you get back to the things that matter, like winning your friggin' ones. Use my link down below and download Outplayed, and that link will let them know where you came from. Alright, let's get back to some Destiny. Alright, while we're talking about these things, I might kind of cut in and out where you can see me talking to you directly. But in the background, you're also probably going to be seeing a little bit of gameplay. It'll be a mix of Trials of Osiris clips, clips from the Control playlist on console, clips from the Control playlist with skill-based matchmaking active on PC, and also some Rumble gameplay sprinkled in there as well. So hopefully you enjoy those clips. If you do, feel free to be like, just timestamp and be like, yo, really enjoyed this play at 6 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that. So I can know what kind of content gameplay-wise you guys really vibe with. So feel free to do that in the comments as well. But let's talk about a few of these changes. Let's hit the most recent one first. Most recently, Bungie had this quest step to defeat 50 champions in to progress the seasonal story content for Season of Plunder. So locked behind that quest step was a cutscene that developed the story further, gave us more insight into the character of Misrax, the dynamic between him and his daughter Ido, and really where these relics that we've been collecting, where they came from, what their significance is. I won't spoil that for you if you haven't gotten there yet, but it is very interesting stuff that ties in a character we don't know much about, and I think we're going to get to know more about as we continue with this seasonal content and maybe even after. But apparently somewhere along the line, Bungie was tracking things in real time and seeing a significant enough decline in player activity with the seasonal content where, you know, week by week, people have been getting to the cutscenes. They've been finishing the weekly quest, getting a little bit of story that they trickle feed you with the seasonal model. They basically trickle feed you a minute and a half of narrative every week, so long as you meet the quest steps for the week to unlock that narrative progression. Well, they saw that a significant enough decline happened where they had this big reveal with the narrative this past week. It was pretty substantial stuff and kind of gave some indication about main characters past and indication about where we're going with future content. So they want people to see that content. They want people to interact with the story. The narrative is arguably one of the strongest things that Destiny has going for them. It's one of the reasons that Sony decided to drop, you know, billions of dollars to acquire them so that they can help tell these stories. There's a reason for that. So they want people to interact with that story content. They saw not enough people were getting there, so they just auto-completed this step of defeat 50 champions. Was that a good call, or is this watering down? There was so much backlash on social media, and I was honestly, I guess I shouldn't be, but I was surprised by how negatively people received that news, that change. Because a lot of people were like, all you had to do was literally LFG for one master catch crash, and bam, it's done. You got it completed. That's all you had to do. They're like, literally, it's 20 minutes and it's done. And I do understand that argument. I don't have I will tell you this right now. I don't have strong feelings on this particular change, on this auto completion of the step. But I do think there's a couple of things that are worth calling attention to. What is easy and convenient for you may not be easy and convenient for everybody else. And so while I understand that a lot of people are taking this stance of it was one master catch, you LFG for a group on the app or on the LFG website, you get a group, you go in, you don't even have to use your mic, you can just stay off of comms if you want to, bang it out, and that quest step is done. I understand that perfectly, but kind of where I stand on that is that if you have to go outside of the game to an application, you know, even if it's the Destiny app, and they're like, it's not technically a third party. If you're using the LFG site, it is a third party. If you're using the Destiny companion app, it's not technically a third party, but it may as well be, because you have to leave the Destiny game and pull something else up in order to get that set up. Okay? And here's the reality. A lot of people don't want to do that. They just don't. I mean, they want to not just be alone while they game, in the sense that I'm off mic, but they want to be alone when they game, as in, like, I don't want to see other people. I do not want to come into contact with other human beings as I do this content just to get to the story. Sure, if I'm raiding, I'll do that. I'll get out of my comfort zone a little bit. But if I'm just progressing seasonal story narrative stuff, I don't want to come into contact with other people, even if it's to go to an LFG posting, respond to it, get people's information, get into the fire team. For some people, even though that is easy, that is an easy thing to do, they still don't want to do it. And so this is what Bungie saw. They were like, not enough people are willing to do those things in order to get this step done quickly. And if you don't do master content, I mean, it is a little bit of a slog compared to other weekly requirements where you're like, just play catch crash, you know, just do some exhibitions and dig up some treasure. That's the easy thing to do. You're already doing that seasonal content anyways. But to defeat all these champions, 50 champions, is a slog if you're not doing the master level stuff, comparatively speaking. So this particular thing, is this Bungie making their game too casual friendly? Is it too accessible? Are they giving free handouts to people? I think with this quest step, No. Like I said, I don't have strong feelings about this topic as it is, but I do fall off the log and say this was not a bad decision for them to make. And of course you get the people who are like, well, I already went through the process of doing all that stuff to get that quest step completed. It's like, good for you. Maybe that's bragging rights for you. But also, you probably have some other stuff to show for it other than just getting to that narrative progression. You probably got some Ascendant alloys if you did the master level stuff. Maybe you got a red border or two, a decent drop, decent roll on a seasonal gun. But you have other stuff to show for your time investment. And that's fine. So I'm with Bungie on this one. I think that if not enough people are getting to the seasonal story progression, especially a big moment in that story progression, this decision was fine. This was a fine decision for them to make. Now, you may disagree. You may think that this is them being too approachable. And I did see some pretty hyperbolic arguments. Hyperbole is when you basically use over-dramatization to express a point, right? This is literally the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is hyperbole when you're just talking about doing the poop scooping in your front yard. That's hyperbole. Anyways, some people are being a little hyperbolic in their conversations about this. I saw a lot of people say things like, well, they may as well just give me Trials of Osiris Adept loot, right? It's the same thing. Oh, I'm not going to do all that hard stuff. So Bungie's like, well, let me just auto-complete your passage for you. Now it's a flawless passage. Here's Adept loot. They're like, it's the same thing. It's not. It's really not the same thing. It's not the same thing as doing a Grandmaster Nightfall to get an Adept Horrors Least and grinding for that. It's not the same thing. This isn't meaningful loot that's locked behind this 50 champion quest step. It's narrative. It's like the heart and the soul of what's going on in Destiny. And they want people to interact with that. So this quest step was a little too chunky to be something that stands in between a player and narrative progression. So this was the right call. This is not auto-completing endgame activities to receive endgame loot. Those two things are definitively not the same. So let's move on to another one. Let's talk about Deepsight Resonance. So with the Witch Queen DLC, Bungie brought weapon crafting to the table. And it was moderately complex when we got that system. Remember, it wasn't just one alloy, one resource that you needed to acquire in order to craft the weapons that you wanted. You had to acquire different resources based on the perks that you wanted to make. Some certain perks required different kinds of elements in order to craft them. They dialed that back and they said, let's not have all of these different currencies for crafting. Let's just make it one currency for crafting the base rolls other than the Ascendant alloys. So let's just do the Resonant alloys and then, and we'll have that one currency. So they watered that down a little bit. And then they reeled it back even further and they said, I know people don't want to have to use a Deepsight Resonance red border weapon. They want to get the frame for it. They don't want to have to take their Insidious that they just got, go out there and shoot a bunch of stuff with it to level up the red border and then extract the essence. They watered it down again and said, now all you have to do is just dismantle the red border and you'll get the progression towards your pattern unlock. You won't get any currency for crafting, but you'll get progress on your pattern. So they just kept dialing back and pulling back. And then they even went a step further and made it so that you don't have to kill as many things to level the guns up, right? So they dialed all this stuff back and watered down this crafting system so that now it is much more approachable for the casual gamer. You know what I mean? Is this, just circling back to the same question that this whole video is about, are they making it too casual friendly? Weapon crafting and leveling up your weapons was supposed to be sort of an end game grind for players who are veterans of the game. They're not just taking a random roll that they got from an encounter. They want to go even further and have some real identity to their gun and have a relationship with it where you can say, no, I crafted this on this day and I have since then acquired this many kills on it. I've reforged it 4 times and really refined it to be exactly the gun that I want it to be. And I had to put in the time, the energy, the resources, the effort in order to do that. And they watered that process down quite a bit. There's been a lot of changes to the way that weapon crafting and Deepsight Resonance works in the game. Is it too casual friendly? I see merits to both sides of the conversation, quite honestly. I see merits to the side that says this is too much of an overcorrection. I really like having to put in that much effort and work because it sort of makes me feel an even deeper connection to the gun that I crafted because I know all of what went into that process. And then there's people on the other side of the equation where they're like, no, man, this is totally great. We just need to remove all of these unnecessary, grindy roadblocks because nobody wants to go into Shuro-Chi for 10 hours to level it up. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to do all this repetitive, meaningless stuff that has been in the game for literally years. We've already exhausted that content, and now this whole Deepsight thing is just a way to force people to interact with content that's no longer relevant. And I understand that side of the argument as well. I think I'm a little centric on this one, but if I had to pick a direction that I'm leaning, I think I'm leaning towards the side of I think that the changes they've made are okay. Making it more approachable is totally fine, because I do agree that Destiny's seasonal model to content lately, outside of the Witch Queen DLC, outside of that, the seasonal model is really just a trickle of content that some of it's new, some of it is recycled. I mean, look at Season of the Plunder. Some of these like expeditions and things that we're doing is just recycling old lost sectors from Mars, from the Warmind DLC, and pretending it's a different space. It's not like hey, you're going back to Mars for this. That would be a little bit more palatable. But instead they're like, this is the Mars lost sector, but let's just put some ice in it and make it look like Europa, and you know what I mean? Let's just pretend we're somewhere else, okay? Just ignore what you're seeing. I know that you're flying through this catch and trying to complete activities. Just ignore the fact that this is the same catch model layout that we had in Destiny 1. Let's just pretend that it's not. Pretend that it's not the same thing. Fallen architecture is just universal, They always lay out their catches the same way. So, forcing people to go and interact with recycled content to sort of give it artificial value, I'm not all about that personally. I'd like to find more meaningful ways to, if we're going to reuse content, more meaningful ways to interact with it other than you just have to do it to level up your guns. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I think the Deepsight changes are probably fine. What about the Flawless pool? Trials of Osiris endgame PvP activity, supposed to be a challenge, supposed to really test the mettle of your team, and then they started making a bunch of changes to it. What if we have a freelance playlist? So it's no longer about being a really fine, well-oiled machine of a team that's coordinating. Now you can just go in solo, cross your fingers. If matchmaking is kind to you, maybe you'll get to the lighthouse. They made it more approachable, more palatable, more watered down. What if we change the way the reward system works? So you don't even have to win games anymore. You just have to win rounds. I mean, you'll get XP and level up your reputation with Saint as long as you win some rounds every now and then. And you'll get Pinnacle loot for winning rounds. You could lose every single game of Trials of Osiris that you play and still get Pinnacle loot and end-game PvP rewards. They watered it down. And then they took it a step further and they said, well, what if we even change up the way that the matchmaking works throughout the weekend so that if you go flawless on Sunday, you go to a separate pool. So you've already gone to the lighthouse. You're clearly talented enough to make it. Let's put you in a separate pool. And if you're the kind of player that's here to grind Trials of Osiris for loot, then you'll play against other people doing the same thing. If you're the kind of person that's just, I'm going to go flawless once and I got my loot and I'm done, then it doesn't matter. You're already out of the pool. So the player pool gets more casual as we progress throughout the week. So by Tuesday morning, the only people left playing Trials of Osiris in the non-flawless pool are the people who haven't managed to go flawless yet. They're probably the more casual PvP audience. And so your chances of going to the lighthouse and getting end game adept PvP loot, your chances are much, much higher. Is this a good thing that we're making endgame PvP stuff more approachable, more palatable, easier to get? So you don't even have to be a PvP person to get endgame PvP loot. Is that a good thing? That's a really good question. And people have very strong feelings about this. I have mixed feelings about it. Again, I see merit to both sides of the conversation. I very much like removing unnecessary obstacles to let more people get endgame PvP loot. One of the things I wish they would do, I think this system that they have is really complex. It takes a player base and it starts to divide it up consistently. Here's all the players we have playing Trials of Osiris. PC and console. Let's split them up. Flawless, non-flawless. Let's split them up again. Now freelance playlist is up. Team and solo. Split them up again. And so the quality of your matches can really take a hit because we started with this healthy player base and we're breaking them apart and then break them apart again and then break them apart again and even again break them apart again. And so you've now divided this player base that was healthy and vibrant up into much smaller clusters to the point where some weekends you can match the same team multiple times in the same card. So is this a good thing? I think they should have gone about this differently. I understand the problem that they were encountering where not enough people were interacting with Trials of Osiris because they felt like it was a insurmountable activity to do. I can't reach the top of that mountain. No matter how hard I try, I'm not going to make it to the top of that mountain. So I may as well not even play because all the loot is at the top of the mountain. There's no loot scattered up the mountainside. If I don't get to the top, I'm not getting my adept gun. I think what they should have done is this. I think if you get 7 wins on a passage of Trials of Osiris, regardless if it has 21 losses on it, if you get 7 wins on a passage of Trials of Osiris, you should be able to go to the Lighthouse. That's my opinion. And when you go to the Lighthouse, you should get your 1 guaranteed adept weapon drop. And that's it. That's what you get out of Light. You get to see Saint. He celebrates you for interacting with the Trials of Osiris, for going through the literal crucible that it was, and emerging with 7 wins. Welcome to the Lighthouse, my friends. You have tested your mettle. You know what I mean? And you open up that big shiny chest, you get your adept gun, and you feel good about it, and you leave. I'd be fine with that. If you go flawless, other things come out of that chest too. The ship, the sparrow, the ghost, maybe even a unique armor ornament set, cosmetic things that you can flex, maybe a different emblem that shows that you went flawless and then tracks flawless visits to the lighthouse. Anything that is a cosmetic item that you can flex that helps add to your guardian's identity, those are great rewards for flawless passages, in my opinion. And then also keep that system where you can then go back to the tower and cash in your flawless ticket for another adept drop. So essentially going flawless means you get more adept loot and cosmetics. Getting 7 wins on a Trials of Osiris passage means you get adept loot. I'm fine with that. I have no problem with extremely casual PvP players getting adept loot. If that means they had to grind through several losses to get 7 wins to get that loot, I think they deserve it. I do. I really do. I really do think they deserve it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I know that some hardcore PvP players will disagree and say, no, if you don't go flawless, you don't deserve adept Trials loot. And I disagree. They're like, well, then what? Why? What's the benefit of me going flawless? Well, the benefit of you going flawless is it took you 45 minutes to get your adept drop, and it took this other guy who's a very casual player 3 hours of playing Trials of Osiris to get his adept loot. So what's the benefit? You did it in less than a third of the time, which means if you keep playing, you turn in that passage, you reset at 0 wins. That means that in the same amount of time it took the casual guy to get 1 adept drop that may not even be a good roll, you got 6 because you got 3 flawless passages in the same amount of time, and you cashed those passages in for an extra roll back at the tower. So your chances of getting god roll, adept, trials loot are so much higher than the casual gamer, and that's the trade-off. I would be totally fine. I'd be totally fine with that system. I think all of the changes they made to Trials of Osiris have been in good taste, but I'm not sure they were the right choices to make. I think there's other ways to make this loot approachable, and I am actually a proponent of outlier protection in all playlists. I do not think there should ever be a game where someone who is a 10 on the skill spectrum should play against someone who is a 1 on the skill spectrum, unless they are a pre-made fire team. Only exception. But I'm a proponent of outlier protection because I don't think there's ever a scenario where the 1 can have fun if there's a 10 in the lobby too. Okay? Because either that means they're getting no kills while the 10 is fragging out if they're on their team, or it means that if the 10's on the other team, it doesn't matter what they do, there's no shot they could win that match. And hopeless matches should never take place, in my opinion. A match where one team stood zero chance of winning, that's a match that should never have happened to begin with. Now let's talk about skill-based matchmaking and sandbox changes. And I'm looping those two things together because they do go hand in hand, in my opinion. Bungie looked at what good players were doing. They were jumping through the air, landing their shots because they were putting Icarus mods on their weapons. Flying through the air, landing their shots, getting a kill on a player that's really thinking on a two-dimensional plane. They're moving through the map, they're looking right in front of them and around them, but they're not doing this and this, right? They're playing on a horizontal plane, not a plane that has a verticality element to it. And that means that it's really hard for them to outplay someone who's really good at the game, flying through the air, landing their shots. And it's frustrating for them. They feel powerless because their brain just isn't taught yet to think in that way, to pick up on audio cues, radar cues that show whether it's a bold red or a light red that lets them know there's a verticality change between them and their opponent. All these things. They're not trained yet to think about those things. So they feel helpless. And Bungie said, let's nerf in our accuracy quite a bit. We'll even bring in this whole airborne effectiveness stat on weapons, and that will dictate how accurate your weapon is while airborne. So they nerfed in their accuracy. Then they said, let's go the other direction with it. Not only are they the good players jumping, they're also sliding into their engagements because they're sliding underneath a fusion shot, a sniper rifle shot, stuff like that. They want to come in low and get the first shot because getting the first shot is a very important thing to do. Let's nerf sliding. So when you slide, you have less stability and you take flinch harder. So sliding into a lane with a sniper rifle and trying to get a quick scope to the head, if you're good enough to do that, you're no longer going to be able to do that very effectively because you're going to get flinched harder. And then they took it a step further. These changes are not helping the casual player enough. Let's put skill-based matchmaking into the casual playlist, the control playlist. That way, these casual players are only matching against other casual players. And that works for them. It does. And I will say that most of the feedback I see from casual players about skill-based matchmaking, most of the feedback I see from casual players is positive. Most of them are saying, this has been great for me. I'm actually playing against people like me. I feel like I stand a chance. You know, so I still have bad gains, but I have good games too, where I drop a 2.5, and I would never see that number before skill-based matchmaking. I would never see that number next to my name on a scoreboard. That was unheard of for me. And that dopamine hit of having one match like that might offset, you know, the 3 losses that they take, where they just break even maybe. And they think back for the rest of the day. They think back to that 2.5 KD match they had. Man, that was so good. I can't believe I did that. You know, and they have a very positive experience about it. And I respect that. And I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. But skill-based matchmaking on the higher end of the skill spectrum means I wait in queue times. I wait in queues for much longer. Much longer. A lot of times people throw shade. They're like, TV, you're playing a lot of Rumble. Why? Because I queue up a Rumble match, and I'm boots on the ground in 60 seconds. I'm boots on the ground in 60 seconds shooting other players. I queue up a control match. 6v6, casual control match. And I showed this on stream recently where I actually saved a couple of queues that went over 5 minutes. 5 minutes of me sitting there on my butt, in my chair, right here, doing nothing but staring at the screen and waiting. So I'm queuing up my game to do nothing. And so it's taken me much longer to get a match. When I get into that match, what Bungie said was going to happen is not happening. And I've shown this in multiple screenshots. Sure, there are good play sessions where I get into a good lobby and people stay in that lobby because it's like finding gold. And so for 6 or 7 matches, it's okay. So during that session, as long as those people stay in that lobby, it's stable, it's good, and it works okay. But a lot of times, Bungie said, we're going to give you tight competitive matches, and they're blowouts. I'm talking scoreboards where at the end of the match, in skill-based matchmaking, where it says our goal is to give you tight competitive matches, it is 150 to 50 points by the end of it. where there's one person or nobody on my team, including myself, that's positive. A lot of times I'm the only one that's positive, barely positive, 1.5 KD, because I'm going out into the middle of the map and I'm fighting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players at a time while my team is constantly respawning. And on the scoreboard, it shows them, KDA 0.2, 0.15, 0.6. There's no possible way that match could have gone any other way. There's not a snowball's chance in where that my team would win that match, because Bungie failed to do what they said they were going to do, and that's give me a tight competitive match. They failed to do it. And they failed to do it over and over and over and over and over again. And the connections are dipping so hard. The players are running into walls sometimes. I'm relying on a good connection to get things like kill clip, killing wind active, where I get a kill, the guy falls over. It doesn't register the kill, it doesn't show the damage, and it doesn't activate my kill perk or things like Devour to give me my health back until 2 or 3 seconds later when it finally registers that kill. And it throws off my entire build. My entire build is all about get that first kill, chain it into another kill. But now killing wind isn't proccing because it's not registering that the guy's dead. My health isn't coming back because Devour hasn't kicked in because it hasn't registered that the other guy is dead. Stuff like that gets completely thrown off when connections are poor. Not only that, but lobby balancing is still functioning the way it used to. Where if the game thinks that I'm the best guy in the lobby, it's going to offset it by giving me the worst guys in the lobby on my team. And now they're playing against an entire enemy team where every player on the enemy team is better than they are, and they have no shot. And so, my issue with skill-based matchmaking is that Bungie set goals for what it would accomplish, and it is not accomplishing those goals at my level. It is accomplishing their goals apparently for the majority of the community, and there is a lot of value in that, so I'm not throwing only shade at the system. It's doing what it said it would do very well for a good portion of the player base. And that's great. It's just not doing it for me. And there's plenty of Control skill-based matchmaking gameplay in the background of this video. I'm still playing Control plenty, which is why I can talk about it, because I'm experiencing it. I know what's happening there because I'm in the thick of it with everybody else. It's just a lot harder for me to want to queue up Control because I know that I'm going to wait a much longer time to get a much worse quality match than if I were to go somewhere else and play a Trials match. Even I played like 5 hours, no more than that, because it's 2 sessions. I probably played about 8 hours in the Flawless pool last week. In the Flawless pool, because I love playing against good players, my skill level, having tight neck-and-neck matches. I love that sensation. But the quality of my matches is not there in Control. Not consistently, at least. So was this, or all of these changes, the Sandbox changes, the skill-based matchmaking changes, are these changes too much in favor of the casual audience and alienating their hardcore audience? I think, unlike my other stances I've taken on other things so far in this video, this is one thing where I will say, I fall off the log and say, I can't get behind these changes 100%. I just can't do it. Because you're gaining a lot with these changes, sure, in favor of the casual audience, and that's totally fine. I would love to find a way to keep these things beneficial for the casual audience, but not alienate your diehard players in the process. I think that there is a world where we can benefit both groups of people. And before people are like, well, why weren't you vocal about these things when it was flipped, when it was good for you because you had connection-based matchmaking and you were getting your content and you had nothing to say about it then when the casuals were getting stomped. Oh, but now that you're on the other side of it, now it's a big deal. And I would say to people, check your biases. Check your biases. You say that because that's what you want to believe. You want to have a bad guy, and you want it to be me or any other player that's skilled at the game that doesn't like these changes. You want to have a bad guy to blame, and I totally understand that. That's perfectly natural, but it is unfortunately one of the worst basic human characteristics. It's commonly occurring for people to have a bias and to act on it and to believe things that are untrue because of it. And that is an unfortunate reality about the human race. But let me politely remind you that for over a year, up until recently, the pinned video on my channel, the very first thing that you would see if you came to my YouTube channel, was a video where I outline all the problems I have with the current PvP system, and a big chunk of that video is talking about how unapproachable it is for the casual player who has outliers in their lobby that throws off lobby balancing and puts them into a situation where there's no way they can have any fun whatsoever. And I talk about plenty of options that we have for alleviating that pressure for the casual gamer without alienating the seasoned veteran. There are ways that we can implement outlier protection, which is a really soft skill-based matchmaking. Quite honestly, I was advocating for a very soft skill-based matchmaking, where basically we say 1s and 2s never match 9s and 10s unless they're in a pre-made fire team. Unless it's me in a fire team with my son, those two types of players should never intersect in a match of Crucible, no matter what the playlist is. And so I proposed a couple of changes. One is outlier protection, where simply outliers can't happen. They can't intersect in the lobby. And the other thing is the lobby bouncing system can't work on averages, because that system doesn't work when there are big skill differences in the lobby. It basically stacks one good player with a bunch of bad players, which means the good player is still going to have fun. He's still going to drop 40 kills in the game, go triple positive or better, and lose the game, but they've still played really well. And then the rest of their team is extremely negative, which means one guy on the team had fun, 5 people played against a full team of people better than them and had no fun at all. And so the casual player doesn't win when lobby balancing works the way on averages, the way that it has worked for a long time. So I proposed a couple of changes that would strike a balance. So before you go saying you never talked about this stuff, just know that I constantly talked about this stuff. I talked about it on Twitter. I talked about it on my YouTube channel. It was front and center. It was literally the first thing you would see if you interacted with my content, was me trying to make suggestions that would be beneficial for the casual player, but would not alienate the good players either. The last thing I'll talk about is Pinnacle weapons. There are so many things that I listed at the beginning of the video that Bungie has done to the game to make it more palatable, make it more approachable. And I won't cover all of them, because I know this is a long video, it's a long discussion, there's a lot of things to talk about, a lot of moving parts, a lot of factors. But the last thing I'll bring up is Pinnacle weapons. So we used to have the Not Forgotten, we had the Recluse, you know, there were a number of different, and the funny thing about the Recluse is that it was the PvP Pinnacle weapon, and it broke PvE. It was like the PvE god weapon, you know, for ad clearing, because it was just absolutely stacked. It was stacked. And then you even had like the Mountaintop as well. Again, a PvP Pinnacle weapon that ended up being one of the best PvE weapons in the game. You know, my very first flawless dungeon run was with Mountaintop and Recluse. So I'm very familiar with that whole song and dance. And this idea of forcing players to go into PvP to do a massive PvP quest to unlock a Pinnacle weapon that they can use in PvE. They would be a detriment to their raid team, they'd be a detriment to their dungeon team during those metas. If they didn't have those things, they would be a clear handicap. So is it a good thing that Bungie got rid of these Pinnacle weapons? I think this is one of those things that is perceived as watering down Destiny content, because now we have these ritual weapons, which are just, they're not that great. They just aren't. They really, the whole point of a ritual weapon is that if you invest in that playlist enough, you'll get a gun that's just pretty good. It's just pretty good. Is it great at anything? No. Bungie is like, let's get away from that. They're not going to be exceptional at anything, but they'll be pretty good in their respective playlists. So if you're like a newer player and you just want to have a fast track to a gun that's going to get the job done, that's what the ritual weapons are going to do. But we're no longer going to have these Pinnacle weapons that we have to balance the game around, locked behind these activities. And that's the thing I want to zero in on. I don't think this is so much watering down Destiny content as much as it is making the job of the developers easier. These Pinnacle weapons were so strong that Bungie had to change the way they designed encounters based around these Pinnacle weapons, so that anytime you have to like design your game around the existence of a weapon, I think that weapon might be a little too strong. You shouldn't have to think about a specific gun. And this is now the Divinity conversation too. Bungie is actively designing raid bosses knowing that Divinity exists and knowing that every team is going to bring a Divinity in there, so they're ramping up the health. Think about War Priest. If you did not have a Divinity on your team, you did not clear War Priest on contest mode. You just didn't. I don't think there's a single team out there that cleared the War Priest encounter without using a Divinity. It was mandatory because Bungie had to design his health bar around the existence of Divinity and linear fusion rifles. It's just a reality. So I think this is more about giving Bungie more creative license. When they get rid of these Pinnacle guns, they have the ability to express their creativity in these encounters more without being restricted by the existence of Pinnacle weapons that are going to offset certain things about the encounter. So I think the Pinnacle weapon is less about making it more casual friendly. I think it's more about letting Bungie have more creative freedom when they design encounters, not having to do so around the existence of a specific outlier gun. You know what I mean? So bringing all of this around full circle to the heart of the discussion today, has all of these changes that Bungie is making, have all of these changes been in the spirit of watering down Destiny and making it more casual, more approachable, more friendly to the new light player? I think a lot of these changes are, yes, in the interest of making it more approachable. Yes, in the interest of making it more palatable. Yes, in the interest of making it easier for the casual gamer to dive into Destiny content and have fun. Is that a bad thing? Overall, I would say no, that is not a bad thing. I think the spirit of what Bungie's been trying to do is good. Is their execution perfect? I don't think so. And that's where the community comes into play. As long as you and I are constantly giving well-constructed feedback, we're citing data and evidence, we're giving actionable feedback where we say this is a problem and maybe these are the things that you could do to alleviate it. As long as we're proposing feedback in good spirit like that, then this is a good thing. We can help refine the Destiny experience so that casual players can jump in and have fun, but veteran players can have challenging end game content that is not too easy, that is highly rewarding, and they have options for showing off how much Destiny they've played and how well they've played it. As long as we keep all of those things a reality and both sides of the community get to have fun with Destiny, then Destiny wins. So I'm okay with making things approachable for casuals as long as we don't alienate the other side of the community in the process. And that's where I stand on it. What do you guys think about these changes recently? Are you on board with the direction that Destiny is headed? Or do you think that this is going a direction that you don't think you can follow? I know I've seen so many people who are like, well, you know what? I followed Destiny up to a point, but this was where I check out. This is where I get off the train. And I wish it luck, but it's no longer my thing. And I totally respect that opinion. Is that you, or are you still riding the train? You still trying to help refine the process, giving feedback, and engaging with the content? Let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know about what you think about any of the topics that I discussed today. I'd love to hear feedback from you guys as well. And if you made it to the end of the video, just comment down below, made it to the end, so that I can give a heart on your comment to let you know that I love and appreciate you for sticking with me to the end. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the Crucible.